Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to get to meet several of you when you first came in. The Commonwealth Court is a very unique court within the whole country. There's only a few courts in the nation that actually hears cases that are addressed by the Commonwealth Court. The Commonwealth Court hears matters involving all state and local government and regulatory agencies. So it will hear cases regarding land use, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, labor relations, taxation, election law. One great example is where there was a Little League field in a community and it was being taxed. And the Little League field was going to have to shut down because they couldn't afford to pay the taxes any longer. That court case went to Commonwealth Court. The court found that it was a non-profit organization and the Little League field now exists within that community still because it was non-profit. The Commonwealth Court will hear matters that come either from the Commonwealth Court straight up, it's equivalent with the level of the Superior Court, or it will hear matters directly from a regulatory agency. The Commonwealth Court is the workforce regarding these cases, similar to Superior Court, because only 5% of the cases are then accepted to be heard by the Supreme Court. So it's extremely important that we make sure that we get the right people on these courts. Now I'm on the clock. I'm delighted to be here. I am from New Hope in Bucks County. However, my family lives in Hershey, so I am in central Pennsylvania quite a bit, and I will be back here on Sunday celebrating Easter with my family. I have been practicing for more than 26 years. One of my first jobs after law school was to clerk for the president judge of the Commonwealth Court, who was an outstanding individual who had a very high standard that he passed on to all of his law clerks. From there, I worked for 2 national law firms. Then I went out and I started my own firm 14 years ago. So I understand what it takes to make a payroll and what it takes to deal in running a business and government regulation. My practice area has been representing businesses throughout the country. In 2002, I was appointed by Governor Schweikert to be the first female member, and I'm still the first female member of the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board, which was created in 1937. I have written extensively, including having authored a book, and I've also been an author in a best-selling book. I've written a chapter. I also believe firmly from day one of my campaign that judges are here to interpret the law and not to legislate from the bench. It is not for attorneys to be arguing before a judge, for the judge to then decide what the law is. It is for the people to be talking to their legislators to decide what the law should or should not be, and judges only interpret the law. I am also a firm believer that when we interpret the Constitution and the Pennsylvania Constitution, which is the rock, that we make sure that we do not bring in foreign law or precedent in interpreting Americans' rights and freedoms. We need to get back to basics within this country, and that is why I am running. That we need to make sure that we have good conservative judges on the court. The Commonwealth Court is so important because it affects every citizen within Pennsylvania. We need to make sure that we have qualified judges who are experienced, who have been there like I have been on the Commonwealth Court, who know the internal operations. I have worked for state agencies, so I know how they operate, and I have run a business for over 14 years, and I know what it takes to have a payroll and to make sure that we are not overburdened and overregulated by the government. I am told its time is up. Oh, I get the 30-second mark. I've also been honored that I was asked to write an article in celebration of the Commonwealth Court's 40th anniversary about public relations law, and I also spoke at a symposium in honor of the court's 40th anniversary, and I stay very connected with the court. As from the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board, all of our appeals in the matter of right go straight to the Commonwealth Court. I'm done. Are there any questions?
Can you tell me what your position is? Are you pro-life or pro-choice?
I am pro-life. I am a practicing Roman Catholic, and I adhere to the principles of the Catholic Church.
You mentioned precedent. Does that mean that you would not be using case law when you're making a decision? You'll be referring directly to the constitutions and not case law.
When I said the word precedent, I talked about making sure that we do not look to foreign law or foreign precedent when we interpret the rights of American citizens. So I don't want to look to any outside wall, whether it's from any other country, that we go back to looking at the Constitution. When you have a case before a judge, you're going to look at what the case law is within the cases decided within the United States, but ultimately it's the Constitution that controls.
Good evening.
And then,
Sorry. Since you've dealt with labor law, I'd like to know your position on the new voting procedures that they're trying to put through with the labor unions and forming a union in a factory. Card check.
when I was in law school, in order to get on law review, you had to enter a writing competition. And being a history major and undergraduate, I went back and I researched the origin of unions. And at the time unions came into effect, there was a real need for unions. Bottom line is, unions were successful. They achieved their mission. However, now that we had all these laws on the book to protect the employee, unions then became a big business, and they lost sight of what the true interest is, which is the individual employee. So we need to look today as to protecting our freedoms and not using the union dues for political purposes, and not to bring down our economy, which is what is happening. And we've also seen that the number of union members have continued to drop off, and there's a reason for that. And we need to keep going in that direction and make sure that we have the right to work.
What's your view on eminent domain? Specifically, does the government have the right to take my property?
The issue on eminent domain is, again, it comes back to personal property and personal rights, and we need to defend the Constitution, and we need to make sure that our rights are protected, and we need to stand strong. So I am in belief that the government cannot just come in and take away your property. We need to stand up. The same with our the rights within the workplace, that we make sure that unions don't come in and tell employers what to do. And it goes back again to being overly regulated. I believe that we need to learn how to work together. I authored a book, and it was based on writing a column for over 10 years in 2 different newspapers, where employers and employees wrote their questions into the newspaper, and I became the dear Abby of the workplace. And the whole purpose was to how to decrease litigation, because we all lose when there's litigation. We all pay for it through higher taxes. So I took all those columns and I turned it into a manuscript. And people said, "What, are you kidding me? Only 2% of the manuscripts ever get accepted." Well, I was one of the 2%. I believed in myself. I believed in the work. And the whole purpose was employers would understand that we need to communicate and work together as employers and employees. So we need to continue to stand strong.
Getting back to labor relations, what is your position on public employees unions, and that includes the power that has grown with teachers unions, any public service employees getting into the issues in Wisconsin? Should public employees unions, A, even be permitted to have unions, but secondly, if they do, should they be permitted to have collective bargaining for salaries, benefits, etc.?
And going back again to the foundation of unions came into this country because there was a real need. Today, unions are serving a different mission, which is how to line their own pocket, and a lot of the union members aren't even happy. There's a increasing high percentage of unfair labor practices against the union for unfair representation. It comes back to needing to talk with the legislators, because right now on the books there's laws saying that employees have the right to organize and they have the right to collective bargaining. So we need to come back to the legislators and talk with them, because they become very powerful, and it's also decreased the amount of economic opportunity. It's also become a safe haven for non-productive employees. I just got the single. Oh, that's a cool. Thank you again. I really appreciate being here.